Okay, Renato, so we are ready. The screen is already shared. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can see the screen.
Okay, so it's up to you.
Okay, can you start?
Yeah, I guess. Go ahead.
Liza?
For me, you can start. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining this session. It's a pleasure to share a little bit with you about cloud modernization and app modernization and app migration. So in this session, I'm gonna share this session with you, Natalia, Rodrigo Guerra, Jacqueline, Nicolas, and Juan. Everybody is app develop expert, and I do appreciate you can take share your questions in the chat window, please. And we're gonna monitor the questions. So the idea today, we're gonna have just 45 minutes to discuss with you, but our intention is just to ignite the spark of innovation and share some ideas that you can take to your applications and transform that in services or opportunities with your customers, okay? So feel free, and this is just a start. We're gonna engage with you in a few days as soon as you complete this session and connect with our more details in the virtual partner connect. Can you switch? Next slide, please. So when you think about, you know that Guillermo, I think Carlos Guillermo mentioned about all the opportunities and challenge that we have in the pandemic. So when you see during the pandemic, the web application, they took an important role in this process, right? So most of the customers, they had to accelerate their transformation, digital transformation. So one of the opportunities they had was a web application. So if you see those numbers, we have today 38 million website, .NET website. These represent like 31% of the entire internet. So when you see this, we see this as an opportunity for you to move those application, .NET application, as a partner. So you can offer this and take this opportunity because you're gonna understand a lot of benefit that you can add to your customer, into your own business, into your own develop process, your company, right? So, but we have just 1.5 million of websites running on Azure App Service. This is one of the opportunities for you to have your application running and in the cloud. So the team will discuss a little bit more in details about app service in the later. And 2/3 of those applications are using our managed service that is using Azure's SQL Server as part of the database. So when we discuss the opportunity for app modernization and app migration, this connection, this conversation of data migration data into the cloud, the data modernization, they will work together. Okay, please next. So when we think about the cloud journey of the cloud migration, you're gonna see we have the migrate first. So the idea is you think about this opportunity in two directions. So Guarida and his team will talk later about data and I. So in this session right now, we're gonna discuss about this bottom highlighting green. You're gonna understand what it can do for app migration. And then the next step for app migration, okay, I can migrate some, for example, we have some tools that will allow you to access your application and easily migrate your application to the cloud. Then we have next step is, let's discuss about modernized apps, and add some new services, new feature that will bring more innovation to your app. And the next step is, okay, let's connect with AI and add even more value to your application. So next, please. And just to finish, when you think about running .NET applications in the cloud, Azure is the best cloud to have your .NET running and SQL Server because the platform was developed to run this kind of service. So when you think about that, we mentioned, I think Carlos just mentioned about the challenge we have with IT professionals. And the idea is when you move your customer move their application to a managed service, you have opportunity to give all those kind of details and those kind of tasks that like patching, updates, and migration, backup, all those kind of stuff. You can transfer this to the cloud provider, and then your team will have more time to focus on what is very important to your business and focus on what is where they add more value, right? With their ideas and their intelligence to build a new code. And then you're gonna have opportunity to add new service, other service, which will allow you to be more productive, add a new feature more faster. And for sure, cloud is a one kind of Azure is a cloud that you can trust and you can operate your application successfully. We support, for example, just have a billion, 9 trillions, for example, queries per day, and 41 billions requests per day. So, and we have 2 million websites. So this is a robust platform that you can trust, and you can for sure make a success with your solution and with your customer. Thank you. Just to finish, you have the agenda. So for in the VPC in the next week, you're gonna have a specific section focused on app innovation, app migration, data and AI. So take a screenshot. You're gonna receive this and just ask for your team to join the session of the track that you think is most important for you. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy the session.
Thanks, Renato.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Natalia.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Super. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. So let's start with this topic. We are going to continue the agenda with the cloud adoption framework and migration. And let's introduce a little bit. So if we are going to talk about migration aspects, it's super important and fundamental to talk about this framework. And the reason is because we need to define more than technical preparation. I mean, this framework allows us to identify the business drivers that are moving that digital transformation for our customers, align the expectation of the main stakeholders, and at the end, we define the adoption plan, including the proper cloud governance. So let's see a little bit more about this methodology. You can see here the cloud adoption framework phases. This framework was built with a modular approach. So our customer can choose the phase depends on their degree of cloud adoption maturity. So let's describe a little bit quickly these phases, and we start with the strategy. This phase is focused on understanding the motivations, the business outcomes, the business justification, and at the end, we could prioritize the project. In the plan phase, we are going to create a cloud adoption plan based on the inventory or current digital state that we are using 5 R's. In a minute, I'm going to explain a little bit more about that. And also define the initial organization alignment and skills readiness plan. In the ready phase, we are going to prepare the people and business process, and we are going to explore the Azure setup guide for creating our first landing zone and knowing a little bit more about the best practices to expand and change and have different version of this landing zone, okay? So in the next phase, adopt has 2 subphases. One is oriented to migrate. This is most commonly associated with the term of lift and shift or rehosting. And another is to innovate. That is a cross application development or modernize application or create something new. So the next 2 phases are manage and govern. There are interactive phases and continue, because in the manage, the main objective is to create a view into the asset from the telemetry perspective and apply automations, control. We also ensure the rapid recovery and business continuity here, and so on. And finally, govern. In this phase, we are creating a policies based on the best practices of security and integrate the corporate policy between on-premise and cloud. So that is the reason there is a continuous process. So you can see the framework here. We have a set of best practices and tooling to ensure the journey to the cloud for our customers and going through the end-to-end in each project, okay? Next, please. Okay, So now let me go in a little more in deep about cloud rationalization, that is the 5 R's. This is a very important or a fundamental step to define what is the best approach to migrate or modernize the workload. So let's start with the rehosting. The rehosting is also referring, as I mentioned before, the lift and shift. And here the application is moved to the infrastructure as a service environment and avoiding as many changes that we have in the system, as many changes that we as possible. So the idea is not move, don't change, and try to be a quickly manner to migrate to the cloud. And refactor, re-architect, and reveal is more focused on the application itself. In this case, the refactor involves small changes in the application and design, and we could take advantage of the infrastructure as a service and potentially in the platform as a service capabilities. And re-architect and reveal involves more big changes in the application, in the design, in the architect itself. And if we move to the right in the build approach, it will take longer to have the deployment ready, but we could also take advantage or leverage all the benefits of cloud. So here, all approaches has several benefits or use case. The idea is to have the support of planning in the cloud adoption framework and select the best approach for this migration or something that we are providing to our customer. Okay, next, please. So based on the previous information, we have as many technologies and services to choose the best option. And part of this session is to show a little bit more about these kind of technologies. And for instance, if we are referring to a lift and shift, we have moved to different operating systems to execute our workload in virtual machines. But if we are referring to refactor, re-architect, or reveal, you can identify another approach oriented to different categories like containers or code itself. Okay. So next, please. Okay. So here you can see the adopt life cycle that is focused on the migration and innovate. And we recommend the migration of the first workload, or it identified the first workload using the migration guidance and additional migration tools if is needed. Also address the common migration needs based on the practices documented on the CAF, and use a process of improvement to evaluate the maturity of the migration aspects and try to have this like a technical memory and try to improve in our complete project, you know. So just to close this initial part of the agenda, please, next, Jorge. Inside of Microsoft, we have a team that is solution assessment, and they provide a service oriented to final customer, and you can leverage and promote this with your final customers. There are some criteria to be considered, but we have a service that no cost. The customer must be enterprise, corporate, or top SMB, and we could have a clear migration opportunity created by the account team in collaboration with the account team of Microsoft. But we have in different categories this service, and we have a result documented to provide a more clear plan to the customer around migration stuff. So just take note. I'm gonna put more information about this service, and you can leverage and promote with your customers. Okay. So I'm not sure if there is any question in the chat window, but let's continue with the agenda, and I could respond through the chat window. Okay.
Thank you, Natalia.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Juan, there is a question. Martin is asking if there any service like a rep to be ready to move our apps to the cloud? We
Yeah,
have
sure.
the
There are
observer.
some wraps available depending on which language or what platforms are you using for developing your applications previously. We can address more detail maybe at the end because we have very tight time, so we can review again the question once we start the Q&A if you prefer it.
The last is, are they free for those one? The service one?
Yeah, some of the available services are there for free. We are gonna review some of them. So one of them is part of the success cases that we are gonna show in a few minutes. Okay, so now we are going to talk about modernized application with app services and AKS. So it's very important to have in mind all the cloud adoption framework that Natalia just told us a few minutes ago, because it's the baseline among we are going to start to talk about different topics. So for migrated modernized legacy applications, we have different paths. And what path are you going to choose? It strongly depends on what kind of application you already have and how that application is already constructed. Also, you can realize here in the slide that among all those different paths, we can choose from some of them that are quick, I mean, migrating directly to the cloud. Some others require some modernization, and some others require even build from scratch the solution. But we have like the complete roadmap that allow an application to be starting at the legacy or on-premise points, and slowly we can start changing that application to be a cloud-ready or a cloud-optimized, cloud-native applications. In the slide, you can see the more you are on the left, you are more oriented to infrastructure, and the more you are on the right, you are more oriented to development. This kind of decision is the starting decision that will be bringing us some clarity about what kind of roadmap is the best for our solution. There are plenty migration tooling options that we offer here at Microsoft. You can see in the right part, we have like a map that allows us to take the decision about what is the best for us and what are the available set of tools that we are supposed to use. And in the left part, we can start talking about briefly about migration, modernization, and continuous improvement over time. About migration is basically a lift and shift. I mean, you have all your application in on-premise environments, then you move all that infrastructure to the cloud, almost using virtual machines or infrastructure as a service related products like VPNs and so on. Then we start talking about modernization. Modernization includes that some part of our applications are going to start using PaaS services. By PaaS, I mean in platform as a service. In that way, you are going to start managing less infrastructure and start managing more platforms that are more related or more closely related to your business. Then we have also the option to talk about overtime. Overtime implies that we are going to start creating a small part or moving a small part of the application to embrace new cloud native technologies. But this is required to be done as once. You can start doing that smoothly and start migrating the simple services on your application, or start migrating or creating in the cloud only the new requirements that are emerging by the time. And slowly your application is going to start embracing all different cloud services that are going to convert your service in something better. You don't care about to copy all the slide. We are going to share the slide later, but this is a very good resource to identify what is the best roadmap for you. We have plenty of success cases. You can look for them at the Microsoft website. But here I'm sharing with all of you this case. This case is about a pet care solution. The complete information, you can review it at the AKMS URL that you can find in the bottom of the slide. But this solution is about a very legacy solution that was created almost as a monolith. It's posted using WPF technologies. So this application is even likely to be migrated to the cloud. There are many different services that needs to be migrated. The first concern that you can identify here is that this application is done in WPS. WPF is built for the desktop. How to move that to the cloud? So we have the WPF Chromium interface that allow us to move WPF user interface and hosted in a Chromium interface. This is a browser interface. And in the same way, we have other tools that allow us to modernize those applications. Some part of the application was moved to NetCore technologies. I mean, the new NetCore development tools and the new NetCore framework. And some other remains using the classic framework because of compatibility issues, or it's going to take more time to be migrated, and so on. This application was also moved as a new front end. This new front end is built on Angular single page applications, and this is a requirement that is going to show us what kind of services do we require from the backend. Let's realize we're going to briefly review that architecture, but these are some of the comments that the customer has. This is a partner that created a solution, or that moved the solution for Mars, that is the one that created the PET solution for service. So why are they really happy with this? Because they were able to move the applications to the cloud and have a fully monitored environment that allow them to measure what is going on with the solution and to better decisions. The new system was built on Azure, even better than they expect, because at the very beginning and because of the legacy stack, they were very concerned about how are they going to move this to the cloud. And they honestly, they only want to build cloud native applications using the most that they already have. But they achieve it. How they achieve it? They achieve it using this architecture that we are seeing here. Not fully details this time, maybe later in the Q&A or maybe in another session, but if you can briefly identify the components here, we are using Kubernetes, we are using different database options, we are using serverless with Azure Functions, we are using DevOps, of course, to manage all the deployment stuff, and we are also using or implementing different practices like microservices, using Azure Event Hubs for Kafka, using ingestion service into the AKS cluster, balances, etc. It's a very comprehensive solutions, but all this was necessary to move all the stuff that they had on-premise and on the legacy stack, and everything is working smoothly and very good. What is the most important thing about this? That moving to PaaS, or start to moving the application to the cloud, and then slowly, or at most quickly as you can, start adopting PaaS strategies, is that you are going to have a faster return of investment. You are going to save a lot of time from your IT operations teams, because it's going to be more easy to manage your application, and you are going to be able to construct a better deployment practices while you are deploying to PaaS or to AKS instead, or be working in the traditional on-premise stack and way to do the things. The best scenarios for Kubernetes on Azure, there are many, but in few words, cost saving is the top scenario here, because you can move to containers and modernize your application very quickly without the need to refactor all the development stack that you are using on. Containers allow us to do that more quickly. Machine learning and databases, this is also about performance. In the cloud, you can use very low latency services, and depending on what your data needs to work on, you can choose different database options and solve different problems with the most cost-efficient tool that you can find. The microservices is another super scenario for containers. Even is almost like the canonical scenario for containers. So you are not only are going to be able to move your on-premise workloads to the cloud, but also if you start modernizing, you can start modernizing using or keeping the current AKS infrastructure, because this infrastructure is already built for microservices. And portability, the thing that is good about using containers is that you can use portability for whatever you want. You can move to your on-premise infrastructure, you can move to one cloud, you can have even hybrid cloud scenarios, and all this is enabled by these services. And finally, like a brief summary, the advantage of using the databases on the cloud, or PaaS database offerings in the cloud, is that you are going to have a competitive TCO. The total cost of operations is going to be shorter, or is going to be less than the usual on-premise infrastructure, because you have a lot of different tools that are going to do all the work for you and your teams. You also have the seamless and compatibility. The databases on the cloud are managing almost the same that the databases on-premise. So there are a layer of a lot of things that are compatible or almost the same in both scenarios. Productivity and performance, because you stop and managing the infrastructure and start managing the things that are really valuable for your service. And the built-in intelligence is that for Microsoft, AI, artificial intelligence is a priority, and we are building a lot of different tools that are able to integrate and interoperate not only with all the data services that you can find on Azure, but also with all the other services related to infrastructure management and monitoring. So that is the thing that I have to tell about this. And remember to put your questions in the chat, and we are going to review it later. So I'm going to change the control for Jacqueline and Nicolas Galabowski, who is going to talk us about GitHub and Azure DevOps. Thank you. Nicolas or Jackie, you can hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
but in this case, Nico is presentation. One moment.
I can move your slides if you need it, so you can tell me, and I'm going to switch for the next one.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you, Juanca. Thanks for everyone for joining. So why DevOps? What is DevOps? I guess everyone knows part of being cloud native and building cloud native applications is going with DevOps, one of the key pillars of providing a good solution to our customers and making that impact that we all want in communities has to do with DevOps, right? So DevOps is the union of people, processes, and tools that will enable us to continuously deliver a great application, great value to our customers, and have the ability to build on top of that different things, right? Next slide, please. So why adopt DevOps, and what are we providing in that space from our side on Microsoft, and why that is important? Basically, it will give you the ability to control all the life cycle of your development, all the life cycle for your application. And with that, you will be able to provide better solutions and better quality to your customers. Next slide, please, Juanca. So I want to talk about this at Microsoft. What is the journey that we're doing with DevOps? I know everyone knows what DevOps is. So we have four pillars here, four key takeaways that I want you to have after this meeting. Take this as a serious approach. Invest on your DevOps teams, invest on a DevOps practice on your team. Start celebrating on results. Every line of code that is not tested, it's a potential bug for you, it's a potential problem going into production. So instead of pushing on the dates, try to make your teams set those efforts in testing, in developing a good quality of a DevOps process, and start working on that, shifting that mindset on we need to deliver right now, to a mindset of, okay, we're not delivering until this is perfection, right? We cannot cheat on shipping until you don't get that mindset of updating your practices, changing the way you work to a more DevOps oriented practice. This won't work, right? So the last one is build the culture you want, and you'll get the behavior you're looking for. As I'm saying, this is great. This is more important to you than to your customers. They won't really see anything from this, but they will get that perfection on the products that you're shipping once you start adopting DevOps. So next slide, please, Juanca. So at Microsoft, as you all know, we have acquired GitHub a while back, right? So there's a lot of options to do DevOps with us. We can use Azure DevOps. We have a lot of history evolving into Azure DevOps. First, we came from Team Foundation Services. Then we evolved to a SaaS-oriented solution on DevOps. We are a great competitor in that space, and now we acquired GitHub 2 years ago already, and we are building a lot on top of that for the community and for everyone to use that. So we have a complete set of tools for the whole life cycle of development, going from the Azure repositories where you start storing your source code, where you can where your team can get the most productive and get the tools to be really into the source and into the production of that source code. We have excellent tools in CI/CD, integrating with third-party tools, everything that's trending right now in the market for pipeline building. We have integration with that. We at Microsoft shifted our mindset, and we understood that, hey, everyone is not using Microsoft technology, and we need to open source to that. We need to make a tool that can interact with a lot of other tools and the tools that make those teams happy, right? So you can bring your own tooling. You can continue to use the tools that you love, but integrate them with our pipelines at Azure Pipelines or GitHub Actions. And of course, once you have your packages complete, you can use GitHub or Azure Artifacts to store that and ship that into other source codes or into production for yourself, right? What I want you to take away from this today is that we are investing a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort into building a great tool for you to make great tools for your customers, for you to make that impact in communities through great software and great DevOps practices. Next. So one key case, you can read the full story here. Ernst & Young has a huge operation globally where they have centers throughout the world. There's one in Argentina, and they're doing a lot of DevOps operations to create all the infrastructures for their internal projects. So once they have a project, an architect will sit down, will define what the architecture looks like, will create the Terraform scripts, will create all the ARM templates, will create how everything needs to be organized in Azure, and then they will go through a lot of pipelines that they have already streamlined and created and evolved every single day of the year into getting that into production and delivering that value to their clients, right? So that's a case I wanted to show. Again, we as Microsoft are very into DevOps. We use it internally. We use it for our customers, and we want you to use it for you and your customers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicolas. So now we have some extra minutes for Q&A. So if you have additional questions, please post it on the chat. We had already answered some of the questions there. Jacqueline and Omar are actually helping us bringing answers to your questions, but the option is open if you want to ask something else.
Any question?
So Juan, while we wait for some question, what if you guys give you a little bit more idea of how they could assess their application or customer using the assessment tool? What do you think? Just in case, if we see.
Yeah, sure. If well, in what specifically do you want to profundize? We can retake any of the that we already have here. That thing, for example, we can start evaluating what is the best way to migrate our applications to the cloud, depending on multiple factors. This diagram on the right can bring us a very deep idea of what things we should start thinking about. The modernization has different parts. One part is always dedicated to infrastructure. Other part is dedicated to modernize the application, but modernize the application has different branches, because while you are modernizing your application, you need to start to thinking about data. That is one important thing, and the other important thing is the software as it is. So start thinking about infrastructure. We have the top of the decision is if we are going to migrate to the cloud as is. This is going to tell us if we are going to migrate using virtual machines. And once you decide to migrate to virtual machines, you can start doing some optimizations to smoothly then start migrating to PaaS. For example, a classical scenario, if you have a software or a platform, a solution that is built using JBoss under Linux, the first option that we think about moving that to the cloud should be PaaS. What happens, but that in the PaaS offerings, there is not necessarily support for JBoss or the version of the middleware that you actually requires for your application. So you need to make the next step in your migration process and start thinking if you are going to modernize your application, changing the software to remove the dependency on the middleware, in this example, JBoss, or if you are going to migrate the application still using the middleware, still using JBoss. If you decide, for example, to start using or to keep using the same middleware that your application strongly depends on, then you have different options. The first option for everyone, what should be, is using containers. Why? Because containers is going to remove the friction about if my stack is not supported in the PaaS offerings. So instead of moving an state like park in the virtual machines, we can start moving to containers, and by moving to containers, we are going to receive a lot of benefits that the container platforms bringing us. This is one first step. The other step, if you don't want to relate or keep depending on the middleware that you have on legacy scenarios or in on-premises scenarios, we can start moving slowly to modernize your applications using cloud services, to say serverless technologies like Azure Functions, Logic Apps, and so on, or even also start moving to new ways to create or to modernize that application. Start thinking at a higher level like microservices, and then start planning what is the best option or the best infrastructure to move those services to the cloud. When we talk about data, there are also some challenges. Those challenges are related, first of all, to compatibility. Most of the most popular database engines that run on-premise are also available on the cloud as PaaS services. The main features are always supported, but sometimes there are some fine tweaks that we used to do in the on-premise scenario that are not easy to move to the cloud. So we need to set up or to review the application with the tools that we have for that, the migration assistant to move data workload from on-premise to the cloud. That will bring in us some clues about what could be the conflict part of the applications that we need to keep an eye on and start modernizing or updating that part. Other important thing is that in the cloud, as next step away from the lift and shifts, is that we can modernize the database infrastructure. So maybe on premise we have only just one database that is containing everything, but in the cloud we can split that database in different services, different databases from different workloads. If we are working on workloads that are related to machine learning or to strong data analysis, we can use databases on the cloud that are related with that. And for the other things that are related with transactional operations, we can keep using similar models to the on-premise relational database, for example, even using the same engine like SQL Server or MySQL or Postgres and so on. Other important thing is about the DevOps pipeline. The real thing for our customers, I mean worldwide, but in this case we are talking about Latin America specifically, is that we don't have so good DevOps practices yet. Most of the time we have a lot of opportunities to improve our DevOps pipeline, so we can take decisions about that using the movement to the cloud as an opportunity. So we need to start looking about what are the things that we can easily deploy using or using Azure DevOps services, or even using GitHub services, and what other things needs to be like rebuilt from scratch. That is likely one probable case, because many companies used to be working with legacy deployment practices like deployment zip files or sending the software by email or putting the software in an FTP server or so on. So we can start creating pipelines in DevOps that allow us to ease all the process, not only by migrating to the cloud, but also by implementing continuous integration and continuous delivery there. In that point, there are also a lot of cost savings over the time. So this is there are other questions related to other topic that we can review right now?
Yeah, actually, there's other question here. It's not related exactly like this, but it's a really interesting question that Martin has. And I'll read this question so everybody's on the same page. And I think it's something
Great.
that Maisa already aboard on the earlier session, but it's good to highlight some points for everybody here. So the question is, what was the impact of adopting new trends through COVID, since many companies do not have a budget for IT area and have to accelerate adoption process in a disruptive way? What happened to those companies that have to move to the cloud and do not have defined the budget or training so that the process is not so difficult to adopt? Is there any team in Microsoft to give some recommendations to these new customers? Okay, so since this is like you talk about some different points here, I'll just share my screen here just to show some things. And guys, feel free to complement me in any other points. So one of those first things is that like Microsoft just launched an initiative last month to help people get modernized and get more digital skills needed for the COVID crisis. So this initiative, it's a set of courses on LinkedIn and Microsoft Learn, and also assessment of what skills people need to go forward on this journey. We also understand that this is like it's a huge journey. It's not a thing that will happen in one day. So it's important for us as Microsoft and for you guys as our partner, so we can pass confidence to our ecosystem and show them like how to do this on a timely manner. So when we talk about skills, I think that this is the main initiative, and after that I would go to Microsoft Learn for the technical skills and for the other part. But I understand that your question is beyond that. You're not only talking about the technical part, you're also talking about the part of the cost and how can we help like really the transformation of these customers. And for the transformation of this customer and the adoption of this new workload, I think that our main answer will be the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. This Cloud Adoption Framework that Natalia just presented, it's a guide to help your organizations make this kind of decisions on how to modernize, how to bring your applications to the cloud, and how also how to be aware of the costs. Because we know that a cloud at the beginning, especially if you don't have the technical skills, can be costly. So have a conversation deep about with our customers on how to create a strategy that go to all the points of the cloud adoption framework. I think it's a great way to have this conversation and talk about costs in a different way, in seeing that maybe at a first glance, when you're adopting the cloud, you're going to have a little more cost, but overall, with the time going on, you're going to be able to save costs with this, and you're also going to be able to get more strategy and more and get other things from the cloud. So if you go here, especially on the CAF, on this guide here, on the part of strategy, you got here the part of motivations, and then there's a part here about cost savings. And if this is the motivation of our customers, this is the way that we should go. If it's not cost saving, maybe your customer is more about innovation or other thing. There's also a path in a way to go on these other ways. Do you want to compliment me, Natalia? I don't know if you.
Yeah, just a quick comment, because just in this kind of situation like COVID, many of the companies need to reevaluate or redefine the strategy, and part of these best practices that we're sharing is to reestablish or change that is needed. So it could be something that you are planning, but in some cases it's something that you are not planning. So definitely, absolutely, you need to redefine. And part of this, the strategy and plan, is focused on that. So you could refer on this part, and it's very useful for this kind of situation. Okay.
Yeah.
So, hey guys, just a quick comment. I think we are over the hour according to the plan. I think we would like to give 10 minutes break before the next session, just to understand if you have any other question, Martin or anybody else. And I think you can close that out. Yeah, hi, and we started the break, right? What do you think, guys?
No, perfect. Just to close this up, like I think it's the cloud adoption framework. I'll put the link here, and we talk a little bit on before some questions. I'll just show guys the pages that we talk about. So if you're talking about ROI, we have a calculator for that, the total cost of ownership calculator. We also talk about ways to do assessment. And we have this tool from Unified Cloud. That's a great tool. And also Azure Migrate. And also when you create a project on Azure Migrate page, it links a lot of assessment tools and programs to help you guys on this journey. So that's it. We hope that this session was great for you. Let's do a little break. And if you guys have any other doubt, we are here on the chat. Okay? So we meet again in 10 minutes, guys. Thank you for your attention.